KPCA.LP, Petaluma, California.
Greetings, Petaluma. Welcome to Two Mooks and a Mic. Hey, folks, this is our last show of the year. We hope it's been a good year for you guys. We're looking forward to the next year. We're actually down to one Mook of a mic with a mic today. Jim Thomas is on assignment elsewhere to be reporting back next year. But we've got a special treat for you today, folks. Normally, as you know, we do a lot of political analysis, both local and national and worldwide. But today we've got three special guests in the studio with us. We have the newly elected Petaluma School District Board members. We've got Caitlin Quinn, Maddie Cloud, and Joanna Pond, and we will be getting into educational issues with these three ladies right after a couple of comments. Well, once again, it's a crazy world out there. The government is partially shut down thanks to Donald Trump's idiocy. You know, he's insisting on a pointless, ineffectual, expensive wall. Wants his $5 billion, and in the meantime, 800,000 people, federal workers, are being furloughed. Some working without pay. Some are going to lose their vacation, etc. He claims that lots of workers have told him, yeah, stand strong on the wall, but that's not what social media or their unions are saying. They're saying, we do not like this and we do not like you. And, of course, sadly, an innocent Guatemalan boy died in custody with Border Patrol. This is the second kid that's died under Trump's horrible, vicious policies. And at the same time, right on Christmas Eve and Christmas, the Border Patrol dumped hundreds of migrants at the El Paso bus station without any kind of arrangement with any of the volunteer groups that normally they coordinate with to find shelter and food. And they were hungry and dirty and very tired and very stressed. It looks like the only other time that happened was right before the election. So once again, this is trying to manufacture a fake crisis to support Donald Trump's vicious policies. And of course, the stock market is whipsawing back and forth. It's had record gains, record losses. I think that's starting to annoy the big financial masters of the universe. How long can Donald Trump hang on with those kind of people as enemies? And just a couple of interesting points here. I was reading recently that the U.S. military budget, when you include the war expenditures, the nuclear weapons in the Department of Energy, Homeland Security, and all that, basically is spending about $1 trillion a year. And if you took 3% of that, $30 billion, it is said that you could end starvation on Earth with 3% of our military budget. Man, that's kind of sickening, isn't it? A little bit of good news. Manhattan condominiums are up 29% since Trump took office, but his properties are down 9%. Sorry if I take a little malicious glee in that. In fact, his golf club in Miami, which provides most of his golf club income, is down 26%. And, we've all been listening to Trump spout and spew about how, the Fed is doing such a terrible job raising interest rates, modest though it may be. Guess what? He's got hundreds of millions of dollars out there in variable interest loans. So every little quarter point is costing him. Well, and then just here's a little thought before we introduce our guests. A Charles M. Blow says, a lie is like a cat. You need to stop it before it gets out the door, or it's really hard to catch. That's, on the Trump issue. Well, folks, so we have our three guests here. We've got Caitlin Quinn, Maddie Cloud, and Joanna Pond, our newly elected school board members. Congratulations, ladies, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, Maddie, I know you were just interviewed by Jason Davies and Cindy Thomas just in the last hour, which I got to hear part of, which was very interesting. So you're all warmed up.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to ask you ladies to do for our listeners is if you would each just tell us just a brief bit of your background, how long you've been here, what your employment or interests are, and then, we'll talk about what motivated you to run for the school board. Do you want to start, Caitlin?
Sure, will do. If you've been listening, thanks for putting up with my voice for another hour. My name is Caitlin Quinn. I'm 25, and I've lived in Petaluma for 21 of those years. So
Good.
I work at Verity, Sonoma County's Rape Crisis Center.
Oh, yeah.
And I ran so that we could have a school board that respects teachers and staff and students.
Beautiful. Yeah. Maddie?
I'm Maddie Cloud. I've lived in Petaluma for over 31 years, raised my children here, have worked in a variety of things, and then I became a teacher, English teacher at Casa Grande for about 10 years, and I've been retired for about 3.
Great.
And I ran because I felt that we needed a voice of experience on the board, and I've been a very involved parent, a very involved teacher, and I felt that I could add something valuable.
Beautiful. Joanna?
My name's Joanna Pond, and I'm 40 years old, and so I'm currently a school counselor at St. Vincent de Paul High School here in town. I have 4 kids, and I have all 4 of my kids currently in schools here in Petaluma, and I wanted to be a voice for people who felt like they weren't being heard by our current school board. And also as a counselor, I feel like I have that voice to add, working with administrators and teachers and parents and students.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, it's clear that just right there in that very brief summation that there's a lot of talent and experience here that the 3 of you offer. And I know, a lot of people, myself included, were concerned that the previous board was really not that receptive to the public and public input. And I know the teachers in the teachers union had issues. Do you guys want to jump in and flesh that out for our listeners a little bit?
Which part?
What's most important? Well, let's start with a specific issue. So a lot of people had concerns when the young woman who was valedictorian at Petaluma High School had her mic cut off when she was addressing issues of sexual harassment that she felt were not being adequately addressed by the board. Let's just start there. So you were all aware of that, I'm sure.
Yes.
And your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I attended the second meeting that Lula Bell and her family went to at the school board, and they were listing all of their complaints, and a lot of them sounded like really valid complaints about how administration was handling what had happened or what hadn't happened, and they had a list of, I think, 7 or 8 different Title IX grievances that they were going to file, I believe, with the EEOC.
Equal Employment
Opportunity Center. It's part of the Department of Justice.
Yeah, okay.
Or the Department of Education. I don't remember.
I think Justice.
Yeah, Justice makes more sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, the board wasn't really listening or responding. I talked to Kimmy Seitz, Lula Bell's mom, after, and she says she has a video recording of one of the board members laughing while Lula Bell was giving her testimony at the previous meeting. So, I understand that there are a lot of privacy concerns. Trust me, I work at the Rape Crisis Center that serves Sonoma County.
Right.
I know confidentiality, especially about minors and sexual assault. But there are ways to talk about it where the community knows that you're taking it seriously and moving forward.
Right.
I think that's one of the issues with the board was that people didn't feel that they were being heard, that that there was no venue for them to talk to it was always, well, we can't talk about that
because of privacy or personnel,
but they never seemed to go beyond that. And
right.
I think that must have been felt by the community because of the vote.
Yes, I think that was building up.
Yeah.
Well, and I was also at that meeting sitting with Caitlin, and so I watched the first meeting on Facebook because I was out of town. And just like watching different young ladies come up and tell their stories about how they had been assaulted in school and just like no reaction. And I understand, again, you can't really give much reaction, but at least like show some type
Some
of
empathy.
compassion.
And these
something.
young ladies were complaining that not only had they been harassed, but they felt that the administration was not properly responding. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is a violation of Title IX to have a campus that feels so hostile that a survivor is afraid of reporting.
Yeah.
That's actually what happened to me when I was a student at Berkeley, and that I was one of 31 people to file a Title IX complaint against UC Berkeley.
Good. And Caitlin, Title IX is the law that says that genders are to be treated equally. Is that right?
Yeah, so it protects on the basis of sex and gender, and that's been found to apply to sexual violence since it's such a gendered crime. It's been found to protect transgender students and queer students.
Yeah.
So Betsy DeVos wants to change all that, of course, but for now it's great.
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, so there was this built-up frustration, I think, particularly among students and parents who were paying attention. And, well, I mean, this really is kind of a clean sweep. I know I put out my personal recommendations, and rarely do I have the joy of all my endorsements winning. Very pleased about that, ladies.
I know, better late than never. Jeez.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, well,
definitely.
it's mutual, really.
Yeah.
So Joanna, why don't talk to me about, tell our listeners a little bit about what you think the main challenges are going to be, and what are your primary goals now that you've been elected and soon to be seated?
I think the main challenges are, well, there's a couple. I think just moving forward, you mentioned the teachers.
Yes.
I know that there has been a lot of acrimony with the teachers in the district.
Right. It's
So we
been
could all
rather
sorry, go ahead.
dysfunctional, hasn't it?
Yeah. And we just need to find some way to sit down and start on common ground and let them know that we're going to hear them. Also, I know that I've spoken with parents who they just given up on the school board. They're like, why even bother going to a meeting, asking for anything, voicing our opinion if we feel like we're not going to be heard?
Right.
I think also letting the community know that we are here to listen to them. They put us in office. We want to hear issues
from
that-
them.
Exactly. We want to hear what they have to say about their students' schools. So.
Yeah, good. And do you think so? And going in, I mean, what do you see the biggest challenge, for the board collectively is going to be? Is it going to be that transparency? Is it going to be the day-to-day bread and butter issues?
I mean, I hope that they're not going to have transparency issues anymore. I think also, like we've been talking about sexual harassment in Title IX. So I was a Title IX officer at my site when I was at Kenilworth, but I don't think any student even knew what that was. I mean, it was.
So the information that wasn't being even disseminated to students who the law is written for and about.
Right. And they would talk to the kids about sexual harassment one day a year.
And that
for
was
like
it?
45 minutes. That was it. And they'd hand them the green pamphlet about sexual harassment. It's probably the same one when you were in school.
Is that right?
I don't think I even got one when I was in school.
So it's the green pamphlet. But then in the student planner, it says Title IX officers. And so they had the 4 people listed, and it was the administrators and the counselors. But it's like, I don't know if the kids made the connection between sexual harassment and Title IX.
I see.
And so if I had heard about anything, like I would actively go and seek out and try to figure out what was going on with certain students. But a lot of kids just wouldn't report for one reason or another.
Didn't know that there was a legal structure that actually was designed to foster protection and communication.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you'd like to maybe see the schools inform the students more thoroughly on that point then.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Maddie, what do you think
The budget.
The budget. Yeah, there's always money issues.
It's just awful. But a lot of that is really beyond our district's control. So in a sense, I mean, the state is really at fault here, and there was beginning to be a lot of movement from the prior board to advocate at the state level
to try to bring home more funds.
With our state representatives, our state senators, our state legislators, to try to change the way that the budget is given out now. They were supposed to be local control. It was supposed to be a funding formula that was giving us more flexibility in our...
This is what Jerry Brown instituted a few years ago with his changes,
It was called the local control funding formula.
Yeah,
from that.
LCFF.
That's right. Trying
In
to
the
stay away from
jargon.
acronyms.
Good for you.
It's really hard.
Listeners
it's really
appreciate
hard.
that. Yeah. But so,
So
the-
that funds the LCAP,
and the LCAP is the
local control and accountability plan.
Okay.
So every district has a plan,
Uh-huh.
and it's supposed to be community-based.
Uh-huh.
You have representatives from all over the community, and they set the priorities for the spending.
And how does ours look right now?
You know, it's interesting. I think there's a lot for us to learn, and that's part of our
Your
our
ramp
learning
up, yeah,
curve.
sure.
Is trying to figure out how does our budget and our local control and accountability plan, or LCAP,
Yeah.
how do they intersect?
Uh-huh.
And they need to intersect.
Yeah.
And
is the local control indicating where the money should be put, and are the priorities
you're
in proper
required
order?
to do it. You're required to cover 8 different areas that the
Okay.
state dictates, but amounts and there's a lot of flexibility.
Okay.
And so it's based on priorities, and that's part of where we have more control is the priorities. How do
Okay.
we set those priorities, our spending priorities?
Okay, so
So it
the
can
three
be
of you,
teachers, it could be class size, it could be
Chromebooks,
yes,
iPads,
Yeah.
whatever.
maybe not.
Maybe
Maybe
not.
not.
Books, pencils, and paper.
Yeah.
There's other sources of income for that too.
Right.
And so the problem with us is that we don't get it very much supplemental funding because we don't have as high a percentage of low-income students.
Right.
And so as other districts do that get a lot of supplemental funds. So
Like
we don't
Santa
get
Rosa,
that.
for instance. A lot more Hispanic population.
I don't. Yeah, a little bit more. I mean, we get some, but we
Some.
don't get it really depends on the percentage in your district overall. Free and reduced lunch, things like that. There's a calculation. We also aren't rich enough.
Right.
So there's something called a basic aid, where they can use districts who are have really high property taxes
Oh, yeah.
can use those property taxes
Have
to
a bigger
fund
share of the
their
pie.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so those very, very wealthy districts in the state, once again, get to pay their teachers $160,000 a year.
Well, and that was part of what Jerry Brown's intention was with the local control program, was to try to balance some of that out, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it needs to be tweaked. It isn't working.
not
I mean,
working.
there's several districts like us
Uh-huh.
that are really between a rock and a hard place, and that's why our funding is really in trouble. And that was certainly recognized by the prior board.
Yeah, that's good. And I've always said,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I know like the city council is going to be struggling with their budget issues,
Yes,
right? And it's
exactly.
like, well, we need another revenue stream. Let's have a tax. And I'm always saying, no, first you go to Sacramento and fix Prop 13 and have a split roll so that the commercial property owners are paying their fair share that they've shifted off on us for years.
It would help.
Yeah.
It would help
Yes.
tremendous. There's a lot of money in the state.
Yeah.
Caitlin, what do you think about the challenges and,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
I mean, everything is a priority, but
Yeah, it's hard, huh?
for me, especially tackling what the students want to see. Everyone always talks about how they're here to serve the students, and at the end of the day, it's about the students.
Yeah.
But students aren't actually really brought to the table a ton. But I do genuinely think that teachers often are the ones that really know. Teachers and counselors and other staff are the ones that know
What's
what's
going
on
on.
students' minds,
Yeah.
because it's an adult that they can talk to who's not mom or dad or grandma.
Yeah. And hopefully
so-
not threatening.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, bullying and sexual harassment are huge things I've heard of. I was serving on the youth commission until very recently. I unfortunately had to resign because it meets at the same time as the school board. So that's one thing I want to change, so I can be on both.
Oh, yeah.
And so that those kids can come to the school board meetings.
Yeah.
Because most of them are in high school, and right now, actually, almost all of them go to Petaluma High.
And when are the board meetings typically?
The second Tuesday the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 6
6 p.m.
6
yeah.
p.m.
Okay.
And so the youth commission meets the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 6:30 p.m.
Hey, yeah. Okay.
And so just really bringing students to the table and they care a lot about mental health. They know that that's a huge issue. They care a lot about sexual violence. They care a lot about knowing who their Title IX coordinator is. At my last meeting with them, we were making posters that had the names of the Title IX coordinators.
Good.
And what sexual harassment looked like, and about sharing nudes, and how that is a major crime now, and different things like that.
There's a can of worms right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
a lot of kids don't realize how crazy that gets in a hurry.
exactly, and I don't think anyone really I don't think anyone has really realized how something is on the internet forever once you put it there.
Yeah.
And now that there are so many more methods, there's a lot that we have a responsibility to work with our kids on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it a lot as a counselor. For 7th graders, I was shocked. 7th graders sending
nudies of themselves and stuff.
or like very partially clothed
Yeah.
pictures, bra and underwear. And the Poly Class Foundation came last year and spoke to every PE class. They were excellent. Like you could hear a pin drop when they were talking about just the legal ramifications of that and just the seriousness of it. So there are a lot of community resources that we could use as well to help us with that.
Yeah, good. Well, so have the three of you looked at the LCAP local control and programming priorities to see what they are and where you might want to change them? Have you had a chance to look at them yet, or is that part of your orientation still?
That's definitely part of our challenge. We know now who at the district is in charge of the LCAP.
Okay.
It's about to be.
Was that a secret before?
No. Well, no. It's just so complicated, and little pieces here
Bureaucratic.
and there. Yeah.
And it's
We've
a
had,
3-year cycle, and we're going into the last year.
Oh, is that right?
So,
The 3-year cycle.
So we can't
Okay.
necessarily change anything too much
No.
at the end of the cycle, but we'll be our
Participating
whole term
in
will
the
be
news.
a new.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we had so much budget information,
Yeah.
crammed into our little heads
Yeah.
in the course of 2 or 3 hours. So,
A lot to assimilate.
Yeah. I haven't even had that one yet. That's my last one. That's my last little training. It's a good one. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I really am.
Well, so individually, Joanna, what prompted you to run? That's a big step to step out there in public and put your name out there for all the love and hate that might come your way.
Yeah, I know. So that's actually it was like a long process. So I was just kind of flippant about it after I knew I was going to be rehired at Kenilworth. And the district made it very clear that they did not want me to work at any of their schools. So This was at the end of your probation and about the edge to get tenure, right? Yeah.
And so what happened there?
So by about April or so, it was made clear that I was not going to be in the district, or not even just tenured, but at any school.
Really?
It was very clear they didn't want me anywhere. Yeah. So I was flippantly maybe I'll just run for school board. I know there's an election coming up, and someone overheard me. She's like, "Oh, really?" Because we need some people to run. I was like, "Yeah, no, actually." And then another group asked me, and then another group, and then actually, what really solidified it for me was when I was at that meeting for on behalf of Lulabelle,
the young
family.
gal whose mic was cut off at the valedictorian speech. Yeah.
Yes, at that board meeting, and I just felt like there needs to be some change. People don't feel like they're going to be heard.
The lack of response on the board's part.
Yeah, and people were like, it doesn't matter how many times you go before the board. They can wait you out.
Yeah.
They'll just keep not responding until you just give up.
They can stonewall you.
Yeah. And people kept seeing that time and time again. So there was an article written about me originally, and that reporter wasn't even there to cover my story. I never called the press or anything.
No.
But he was there in response to some other parents who felt like the only way for them to get a response was to call the press.
Oh, yeah.
So it had gotten to that point. People just felt like they weren't being heard. So that's
they
really
needed to shine a little light on it.
Yeah.
But that motivated you. Good.
Yeah.
I remember years and years before I ran for city council, I was in one of a Good Citizens groups, and we'd met with Warren Salmons, who was the planning director in here at the city, and he was rather arrogant. Sort of, there were 25 of us, and he sort of sneered, and it's like, yeah, you guys show up at these meetings, but then you'll be gone, and you want to make a difference, get elected.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Challenge
Thanks,
accepted.
Warren. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Maddie, what prompted you? How did that come to be?
a long process.
Yeah.
Since I moved here, really. Because I moved from San Francisco in the mid 80s,
Okay.
and my kids were little, and I knew people on the school board. If in the city you didn't know anybody.
Too big.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
And so this was like, well, this is really, really nice. And I
Kind of more
was
manageable.
always really involved in education, whether it was with my kids or just with myself. And then I became a teacher. And I became a teacher when I was 56.
Oh, yeah. That's,
So it was late.
yeah.
And
Give you a real interesting perspective.
yeah, it was. And it was something, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, the most challenging I've ever done, but also by far the most rewarding and wonderful, and had wonderful students and met wonderful teachers. And I became involved as a union rep at CASA. And
Now, as a union rep, did you were you bumping heads with the board, or what was that experience
yes, it
like?
was with the district.
With the
And,
district.
yeah, because of the contract. And it was I think I started in 2011 maybe, or 12. So we were coming out of the recession.
Right.
And there was just a lot of sense of betrayal, lack of communication, a lot of animosity, and then it became adversarial.
Yeah, the teachers felt betrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they hadn't gotten any
Yeah.
raises. And
Yeah, and we were told that we would once
things
money
normalized.
started. Yeah, and then it didn't happen, and there was also an acrimony that hadn't been there for a long time, and it just never got any better.
yeah.
And even it was really bad. And so it just kind of, when I retired, I felt like, and that was 3 years ago, and I felt like, wait a minute, I have all this perspective, I have all of this experience. And so I thought, if I ran for the board, and I won, that at least it would be informed, and
Yeah.
I could give them
Yeah.
some of what I know, and my institutional knowledge.
Right.
And also just having lived here as a long time, as a parent and as a teacher.
And I think none of the three incumbents that lost, none of them had any direct educational
No.
experience. They weren't teachers, they weren't aides, they weren't counselors or anything like that. Yeah, good for you.
It
And
makes
when-
sense, right? To have teachers
It does.
on the board.
Downright logical.
Yeah, exactly. One teacher acquaintance of mine said, "Yeah, it's like we're supposed to be in a cooperative decision-making mode. They make the decisions,
decision making.
and now we're supposed to cooperate or something. And then we're supposed to share."
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Caitlin, how did it come to be for you, my dear?
Yeah. So I've been involved in politics since I was 18.
Good for you. That's what we
yeah.
like to see.
Yeah. I mean,
There's hope.
I went to UC Berkeley in fall 2011 after graduating from CASA, and my first semester there was Occupy.
Oh, yeah. Right on.
So we were thrown right into politics,
Yeah.
and kind of the larger picture politics, not just like election. But, I got really involved in campaigning, door knocking, phone banking. And so I really learned a lot of the actual skills that it takes to run a campaign.
Boy, that is really good experience. Door knocking.
Yeah. Oh
and-
my God, it's awesome. I
phone-
hate it, but it's
But it's
awesome.
rewarding, too,
It's so
isn't it?
rewarding. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, I
yeah.
met so many great people on the campaign trail.
I know it can be hard to get started on that, but once
Exactly.
you start seeing
you get
people
them, yeah.
responding and you find out they're hungry for information, and if they see that you've got
Exactly.
valid information, they just want it
Yeah.
from you.
It's amazing and
Yeah.
horrible, and all of the above.
So good feet on the ground.
Yeah, I got my feet on the ground. And I moved back to Petaluma after I graduated, even though all the time in college I was like, oh, I'm never going back to Petaluma, a small town. And as I went through my senior year, I was like, oh, Petaluma's actually pretty great. It's not my fault my parents have good taste in towns. I'll move back. And I just keep trying different new opportunities and seeing how much change I can or can't make. And it felt like time to run for school board. When I saw the teachers striking, I went out there and brought them coffee
good for you.
and struck with them.
Yeah.
And then with all the Lulabelle BS, that was around the same time that I went to the United State of Women, which is kind of like the Women's March's conference.
Okay.
It's like the same kind of organizer.
Okay.
Or it's not the same organizers, but
Like-
same kind of idea.
Okay.
And, you know, they were talking and Michelle Obama was talking and they were like, if this idiot can run for president and win, you can probably run for like city council or school board or county and do just fine. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. I am pretty smart and I'm not a patient person. I'm not going to wait until someone asks me to run. I'm just gonna do it.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good
so
for you, Caitlin.
here we are.
Yeah. I felt like the local, at least the print media, was pretty much negligent about reporting on teacher strikes and contract negotiations and stuff. I mean, if there was any coverage in there, it was really minimal. And you know, and it's the kind of thing that's very important to the community, right?
Yeah.
So you went through Petaluma Public Schools, start to finish, right?
Yeah. So I was one of the first classes to go all the way through Sonoma Mountain when it was a new school, back when it was still a public, not a charter. I think it's still a public charter. But and then Kenilworth, we were the first class to go all the way through the new Kenilworth, and then I got to Casa, and I was like, old buildings, old textbooks, what the heck? But I mean, I loved it, and it really
toughed it out.
I toughed it out at public school.
But I don't know if our listeners know, but you know, I heard on when you were on the show just an hour ago that Maddie was one of your teachers at one point.
She wasn't one of my teachers, but a lot of my friends had her, and they adored her. Whenever I was knocking on doors, people, you know, I'd be pushing for these two too, because I was genuinely like, at least one of us has to get on, you know. But they'd be like, oh, one of them's a teacher. Well, did you guys like her when you were a student? I was like, look, she was one of the ones that we would like help find the way around the filters to like, you know, the school.
Google search filters.
Exactly. Like the students loved and trusted her. And and I mean, we saw the same thing with Joanna when she wasn't getting rehired. The community came out to the school board meeting, like not all but viciously. Like the community was wholeheartedly like, we love this woman and she's doing a good job.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, I mean, seeing how that happened too also made me want to
jump
run.
in. Yeah, good. Yeah, I know under prior superintendents, I know that there were some, you know, racial instances at Petaluma High that once again, you know, the administration did not properly address, you know, parents would bring their complaints and they would go to the board and they were not addressed. So it seems like there's been this long, slow buildup of frustration with the board as it stands. So, do you anticipate any trouble working with the two remaining incumbents?
I don't think so. They've been really gracious.
Good.
And the day after the election, Frank Lynch called and he was like, congratulations, we're going to help you. So happy to be working with you. Actually was his grandson's counselor at Kenilworth.
Oh, really?
So a little bit of history.
Good. That's good.
Yeah. And then Ellen, the same, extended her, you know, hand and, you know, we'll all work through this together. So,
yeah, and then, you know, it's interesting. I mean, you know, when you've got a group of 5, there's always a different dynamic depending on who's in there. People have different, you know, styles of governing, I guess you'd call it. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on how you're going to approach things, or just go open-minded and see how it goes?
I feel like the last board approached things very much as lawyers tend to do, like from the mindset of liability and getting caught and being sued and different things.
Risk assessment.
Very much a risk assessment. And that is not at all the way I do things. A little bit to a fault. So I'm hoping these ladies and Ellen and Frank will help me a little bit with that. But, you know, like we got to make bold moves for our kids. And that doesn't mean stupid moves. But risk is sometimes worth it.
I'm like you. I'd like to talk. I'm a counselor. So I want to respond to people. At least like say thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing this before us. We'll take this into consideration instead of just nothing.
Yeah.
Right. There are ways to still follow the Brown Act, but be a human.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, people can bring specifics, and maybe those specifics can't be discussed if there's a threat of a lawsuit or something, but you can certainly extrapolate and say, well, if these kinds of situations come back, let's talk about how to address them and deal with them. Yeah. There's no reason you can't do that.
And I've heard people go to the board and just say, can you just put this on the agenda for the next meeting?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
There's power.
It's not on the agenda. And they go, could you please put this on the next? And then again, they give up.
Now, who's in charge of putting items on the agenda? Is it the board president? Is it the superintendent? I know in the city council, we ended up passing a rule that said if 3 council members out of the 7 said they wanted something on the agenda, it went on the next month's or the next meetings, you know, if it could physically happen. So
supposedly we can ask as individual board members, and I don't know whether it goes, we're still learning the protocols.
The procedurals.
But I think it goes through the board president.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we can ask for that, and
And I would think especially if
don't
any
think
two of you
anybody
were
was-
saying, I
no.
want
Yeah.
something, then,
Yes.
yeah, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
yeah,
Right.
Then-
yeah. And we've met with all of the assistant superintendent. Well, Caitlin.
All but one, yes, for me. But yes, yeah.
Okay.
And they've been wonderful. Really, just anything you want,
Great.
any information,
Yeah.
bending over backwards to get us up to speed.
Yes.
So, and I think putting things on the agenda, having public hearings are the way that we can
Invite the
establish,
public. and-
Exactly.
transparency,
Exactly.
Yeah.
get community input, and also showing up. So Caitlin got an email from somebody from the Community Health Institute of the Petaluma area, CHIPA, which is part of Petaluma Healthcare District.
Okay.
And they were having a meeting that was to go over strategies in dealing with different areas of mental health for students.
Oh, good. So
And-
there's
and-
where that should be a natural collaboration.
Yes, and they were collaborating with superintendents in South County.
South County.
And so to try to figure out, how do we address mental illness? Let's see, there were 3 different things: parent education and parent support for mental health issues. And then parent
So they
education.
were asking board
They were
members
asking
to
for
join
strategies,
them?
from the
okay.
Petaluma Health Care District and CHIPA to find out, what resources are there right here in Petaluma locally or in the county that can help us, develop a program
Yeah, good.
to address this. And Petaluma City Schools has is very much involved in that and has been doing really good things for a few years now, I
Good.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
But since I'm retired, I have lots of time. So I said,
Not
I'll
anymore,
go.
you don't, Maddie.
Yes, I know. I'm realizing I'm a little more constricted. But so it was 3:30 in the afternoon. I could go.
Perfect.
And they were so appreciative that a school board member was
yeah.
there.
Yeah, how about that?
And they just, and it was just presence. It was just showing up and being interested in what was going on
Yeah.
and kind of soaking it in a little bit. And,
Yeah, you can't build a relationship if you're not going to be there.
Exactly.
You're not going to sit in the seat.
and those relationships. So now, I kind of have a sense of where we are as a district in this conversation, but also just kind of like, my goodness, the amount of organizations and nonprofit. I mean, Verity.
Yeah.
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 We're everywhere.
It's
Yeah, we're
pretty
blessed. We are really
are.
rich
We
with
are.
volunteers and people that
Yes.
really love and care and
PPSC,
work. Yeah, exactly.
Mentor Me. I mean,
Well,
all of these
PCA
wonderful-
right here, Petaluma
PCA,
Community
yeah,
Access. I
yeah.
mean, what a rich resource that
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
really.
great. Well, so now, so where are things at with the teacher's contract right now?
There's a
There's
tentative,
a tentative
agreement.
agreement that they will vote on after school comes back into session.
Okay.
And then we would vote to approve it.
And then we,
Okay,
if,
and
if
there's
the teachers vote
there's
for it.
raises built into this one, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know how
I don't know
how much we can talk about it.
but it looks good to the 3 of us.
Okay,
so
and
far.
and does it look like the teachers are supportive of this version?
I hope so. I mean, their negotiating team were the ones that agreed to it, and
Okay,
that
that's a
negotiating
good
team
sign.
has been very,
Yeah.
like, no, we're going to hold out till we.
Good.
I think they felt like with our election,
That they had a better chance to have a fair.
Yeah.
it's really that.
And they had
fair
a new
contract.
they have a new assistant superintendent of human resources.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. And
Yeah,
he's
so that was
now
instrumental
their
in that.
head negotiator.
Yeah.
And so
Matthew
again,
Harris.
and so that helped build relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
good.
he had experience as a counsel for CTA, the California Teachers,
Teachers
Association.
Association,
So
yeah.
he knows what it's like on their side. Those
Yeah.
were air quotes, folks. Like they're we're all here. We're all here for the students.
That's right. Yeah. 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 My dad was actually a teacher for LA Unified when I was growing up. So
Oh boy.
got it. For educators, got great respect. Right.
Yeah.
Well, good. So that's I think that's very positive. Seeming going forward, and certainly.
Very.
This is where a change on the board can really sort of clear the boards a bit, I hope, in that,
Yeah.
I know it's always going to be, there is always tension where there's contracts and budgets because there's never enough money.
Right.
But it'd be interesting to see how you guys implement what you think the LDAP, LCAP, thank you, priorities should be.
I'm always talking in the weeds.
And and then there was, I remember there was some talk during the election about the campaign about have board members visited schools or something.
Yeah. I went up to Cherry Valley the other day, and I had never, I'd been there just when my kids had basketball practice, but I never walked around the whole school. And they have a new principal. She's fantastic. Gave me a tour.
Now, do you have kids at Cherry Valley?
I don't,
Okay.
but I work down the street.
Okay.
And sometimes, we take long walks
It's
around
pretty
the
over
blocks.
there.
I'm like, what? I think I'm going to go up there intentionally to visit. And there's so many schools on this side of town. So during my lunch break, I would like to go and visit more of them.
Yeah. How many schools are there in the district of all grades typically?
It's
Petaluma,
Well,
Casa.
it's primary, and then you have the secondary.
Yeah.
So you have 8 districts that feed into the secondary district.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And then
Yeah.
I think there's 7 elementary schools.
Yeah. Well,
something like that.
we'll
Yeah,
know
and
soon
then-
enough.
Yeah.
Because they also have all these
All
new
these
little
charters.
Charters. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
Those are
popping up.
So
ed
it's-
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah, I want to say it's between 20 and 30 total.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And then charter schools are a whole nother issue, right? I mean, a lot of people, well, you'd take it from Betsy DeVos's viewpoint, please don't. But, her and her chums want to privatize public education. And then, of course, that just means more discrimination and stratification and, but I know there's some, Live Oak Charter School and hear good things about it and things. I don't have kids in the school, so I've never had that direct experience. But, you hear various things from people that do. Where do you see the charter school issue playing out in our town today?
Well, just based on my limited experience of working with some students who are coming to Kenilworth from Live Oak, or talking just with families who have kids at Cherry Valley, they love their schools. They don't seem to exclude anyone. From what I've heard, I haven't heard of anyone being blocked from going to any of them.
That's a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know specifically what the issues are in this town with charter schools.
They're
Again,
very
we would need to speak with.
They're different.
Yeah.
So you have Live Oak, which is an independent charter. And so
As opposed to public charter.
yes. And so you have dependent charters, and most of ours are under the districts. So they have to have, teachers from our union,
Okay.
and
And they have certain educational
have-
benchmarks.
yes,
and
exactly.
the achievements
Exactly.
and certain amount
Exactly. It's the same as the regular school. They just have a more of a focus.
on a particular orientation or
Yeah,
academic
a couple of them are gate oriented.
Yeah.
gate oriented.
Acronym.
Gifted and
Gifted and talented,
Okay.
which actually at a state level doesn't even exist anymore. But it's for those students that are identified as gifted and talented in our district, according to our district protocols.
That gives them an opportunity to excel all the more then. The gate schools then.
I think that is
That's the idea.
The idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
No,
McKinley a charter school?
Yes,
McKinley is.
it's both.
Okay.
yeah.
Ow.
So the
my
K
brain.
through 6, that is the public, and then
I'm
they
still
have, because
learning
there's a
about
couple
that
of
one.
different
It's
schools
got
on
a
that
parallel.
campus. Yeah,
It's a parallel.
they have the 4th through 6th grade accelerated, but then they have the 7th and 8th grade.
Also
It's-
accelerated.
Yeah.
So that's the only time when I've heard issues. Well, if they're all on the same campus, why are some kids accelerating faster than others?
Yeah. Does that leave somebody behind?
Yeah. And it's great because, Matt Harris was
Yeah.
the principal there for so long, and now he's at the district office.
Yeah.
So I think we could even ask him directly, or he can
Right,
give
what he
us some
thinks of-
insight.
yeah.
But yeah, I didn't hear too much on the campaign trail. If it was just a few questions, nothing brought directly to
So
myself.
not a big point of
Yeah.
view.
But if there is a point of contention, please
We
let
wanna
us
know.
know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so for instance, when you were out there knocking on doors or walking the streets and stuff, what did you learn? What was a surprise? Anything? Caitlin, what, for instance, did you
People
stumble
really
across?
love teachers and want to
Yeah.
support the teachers
good.
union. So
Good news. Good
Yeah.
that
news.
was,
Yeah.
I think, the biggest surprise is because, I surround myself with people that think like that.
Yeah.
But it was really heartening to hear how much everyone was like, oh, well, what do the teachers think? And I, before they endorsed me, I could say, I really love teachers. I think they're going to endorse me. I can't make any promises. And after they endorsed us, I was like, well, they endorsed me and Joanna and Maddie. So that was the biggest surprise, that and how many people, both the people that had kids in the schools and didn't seem to care, and the people that didn't have kids in the school and really did care.
Yeah, that is
so
interesting.
that, there were people with kids who did really care, and there were people without kids who were like, why should I care? But there were
but some
still
had kids in school and didn't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that all you can do is leave your lit behind. And
Yeah. That's interesting. Maddie, would you need anything that surprised you?
I think I don't know whether it surprised me, but it was certainly it certainly helped me a lot was when I realized that school board opened doors. To run for school board, people would stop and listen and talk to me.
Uh-huh.
And I think city council is very different.
Yeah.
Even though it's nonpartisan, it's more partisan in people's minds.
Yeah.
And school board, it just doesn't have that same
politicization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was a teacher, then they would definitely,
Maybe this
especially at CASA.
Maybe this is where the lack of press sort of benefits the the larger context. Joanna, did you have anything that came up that was surprising to you?
Yeah, actually, I was surprised how many white people cared about diversity.
Oh, right on.
no, that's real.
bad.
That's real.
That sounds so bad, but I was
But for our listeners that don't know Joanna's
I'm
a
black.
woman of color.
And, I mean, I knew it was important to me, and
Right.
to, people who
Boy,
look
that's-
like me. And
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That sort of ratifies my understanding of our community.
Yeah. And I mean, again, at McKinley, I know a number of people, white families who have transferred their kids there. And even, they are wondering about the inequities on that campus.
Yeah.
Because it's primarily Latino. And so, and they're just like, there's no teachers who look like my kids'
kids.
friends. Or,
Yeah.
but then like from the parents of color, like where are the teachers and staff that look like us?
Yeah.
So that surprised me a lot because I knew it was important to me. I didn't realize how important it was
Yeah.
to the greater community.
Yeah.
So.
And that's really where, the racist fundamentals, of our society, really, it's hard to overcome that where, you still see colleges and, Ivy League colleges. And of course, there's battles going on with, affirmative action and everything. But it's hard to get the line people in the organizations to reflect the community. It takes a long time, and it's way overdue. Yeah, interesting. Well, that's very sweet to hear that. Yeah, that's the Petaluma way.
Yes.
The Petaluma way. That's what Joe, what's Joe's last name? The manager at the library, real great guy, and he's like, it's the Petaluma way.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
It's
we
pretty
like that.
amazing.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, that's good. So, what else do you see coming up? I mean, you guys got a lot of work cut out for you. I hope you like to be in meetings.
Yeah.
Meetings
we
and
love
meetings.
windowless
Yeah.
rooms.
I mean,
and fluorescent
we keep
lights.
hearing like how much work, and it's like we know that. We know it's going to be a lot of
Right.
work.
But you're ready for it.
We are ready. And like Caitlin said, I mean, I look at other people in the office, and Michelle Obama talks about in her book and on her book tour, like, just because they're in office currently does not mean that they're any smarter or
Exactly.
better than you are.
Yeah.
Like, you go out there and you run as well, and you
Yeah.
have just as much to add as anyone else does. So
Yeah, I think we've got the most horrible example of that in the White House right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Right. But you're never going to be perfect enough for office or,
Yes.
I mean, hopefully you'll be informed enough, but you're never going to know every single thing
Yeah,
about everything.
Yeah. When I was on the city council, I spent 8 years there, and it was we had a city manager, Fred Stouter, who I still have a lot of great respect for, and he said, city council people really don't get good at what they're doing until they've been at it for 5 years. Now, he told me that when I'd been there a couple years. I thought, well, I think I got a pretty good grip on this. But when I hit 5 years, I thought, Fred's really pretty right, because there's so many nuances and subtleties, and then there's the relationships with staff and who's got what orientation or axe to grind in some cases in the city hall, but that you really begin to see the texture and color of what's really there, and then know how to cope with that.
Yeah.
But I think you guys look like you got a lot of promise right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
one of the hardest parts about democracy is the changing people.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, for better or for worse. What you're saying is a lot of the time true, but a lot of time it can also be, well, we've always done things this way,
Yeah.
so why would we change it? And
Or conversely, it's like the experience that says, well,
Yeah.
we tried these other ways and we found this works best.
Right.
And so if you want to change that, really think
Yeah.
it through before
Yeah.
you run up that
Right.
hill. But
yeah.
yeah.
Well, certainly our community spoke pretty loudly that they wanted
Yes.
change. They
Yeah.
wanted this diversity. I'd say, I
Yes.
guess I'm the elder in the diversity department.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we've got an open gay bisexual, right?
Bisexual
young woman.
Yeah.
woman.
We've got Maddie, who's the elder,
elder.
although we like to think of that as mature,
That's
those of us
right,
with
that's
gray
right,
hair.
yes.
And we've got Joanna Pond, who's a woman of color. This is a really nice,
Black and brown, honey.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. Do any of you speak Spanish?
I
I'm
took
gonna take
5 years.
lessons.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
Well, I took 5 years, and I actually have been like relearning it.
Good.
And practicing it at
Good.
school with people I know who speak Spanish, because I want to be able to go out and
Yeah.
speak to members of our community who
Yes.
speak Spanish. I think that's
Yes.
really important. so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
Good.
in the same kind of boat as Joanna. Mi maestra would be very sad to know how malo mi español es ahora, pero
Which means
That sounds good.
my teacher would be kind of disappointed with how bad my Spanish is now. But
yeah.
I took 6 years of Spanish between middle school and high school. And
oh, good. Yeah.
I was one of, I think, 2 white kids in AP Spanish 5, which was AP
Oh,
Spanish
really?
literature.
Yeah.
oh,
So a
interesting.
lot of Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh,
and-
excellent.
yeah,
Good reading there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was that at Casa?
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
on.
Senora Martinez Chavez and Senora Walker kept me going.
were great.
Yeah, awesome ladies.
Yeah.
And you're taking
Amazing.
some lessons, Maddie?
Well, I planned on it. I was gonna
Yeah.
I was gonna start at the JC in January, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think I need to give myself a little time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always regretted taking French,
Yeah.
And I only took it because my older brother and my older sister took it, and I knew who the teacher was.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So got to stumble along with some of those Spanglish.
Yeah. That's how I.
It's Matthew Harris, who's now in charge of human resources and was in charge of McKinley. He's trilingual.
Yeah, he speaks French and Spanish.
Oh.
And then Cliff speaks Spanish.
DeGraw, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think
Good. Well, I mean,
Gary-
and
Gary must know
does-
some
he must
Spanish.
Know,
Yeah.
And so they're really, I think that there's a real
intention to work.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because what percentage of our community is Hispanic these days? Do you know? 25, 30% or
It's-
something?
think it's
around-
30%.
yeah.
It's around
Yeah.
30%.
Between 20 and 30.
The student population at CASA, I think, is a little higher, Latino, but yeah, it's around 30.
Yeah, good.
33.
Well, this is great, ladies. I know, that talking to people in the city council, newly electeds and such. I mean, it's a whole different ballgame because, personally, I think they've really got to start addressing global warming because
Yes.
if we don't have a safe Earth,
Yeah.
none of the rest of this is going to
No,
be very
so
important. But but it's really neat to see that there's this wonderful, rich resource of talent right here in the room. And so, listeners, we have as our guests here, we've got Joanna Pond, Maddie Cloud, and Caitlin Quinn as the newly elected Petaluma School Board members. We have been having a nice chat with them and really looking forward to seeing them get to work. Any closing thoughts you want to share with our listeners? Where it's coming up on a new year.
Come out to our swearing
Yes,
in
come to the
ceremony, our
swearing in.
first
Oh.
school board
January
meeting,
8th.
Okay.
January 8th at 6 p.m.
January
So-
8th.
6 p.m. at the school board meeting room, which is 200 Douglas Street.
Okay, is that at the old Hagstrom's Market?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sure.
over by Petaluma
Yes.
High.
That's what I've heard. Next to Kenny's Donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
next to
it.
Kenny's Donut.
Used to be Hagstrom's Market. Yeah,
it was.
that's
I
right.
remember that.
Yeah.
You could always get lost getting there. Yeah, and come to meetings.
Yeah.
And
So-
we're very
so-
excited.
Email
So
us.
January 8th
Yes.
is what day of the week?
Tuesday.
A Tuesday. So it's the second Tuesday of January at 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock. So it's the day after the council member and mayor swearing in.
Oh,
too.
okay.
So just get all your civic duty out of the way early in the year. And
Yeah.
it's never done. It's never
Yeah.
done, y'all. Voting's the easy part. Show
Let's
up.
see. So it's not Tuesday of next week,
One more week. Yeah.
the week
2
after.
weeks.
Yeah, because
okay.
Tuesday's January 1st.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we're not doing
No
anything that
meetings
day.
on January.
No.
You guys
no.
get holidays.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I think that, I think all of us are excited to start and see where all of this goes,
Yeah.
Yes.
And kind of like, ooh.
Well, and I think, so I mean, our show is mostly political, and, we always track the horror show coming out of Washington, D.C., and it looks like Trump is maybe starting to thrash, and, but we're all excited about the Democrats taking back the House, and
Yes,
that's going to make
thank God.
a huge difference in slowing down the destruction
Yeah.
of environmental protections, economic equality, all that
Yeah.
stuff, But this is locally, I mean, really, things are boding well, if not just for Petaluma, but certainly for Petaluma, if not the larger world. So, good. Well, that's we're coming up
No
towards the
pressure,
top of.
No pressure.
No pressure though.
Come on, you guys are strong and united, and
Yeah.
and intelligent, brilliant, and that's Petaluma's fortunate to have you. So thank you,
you.
the
Thanks so
three of
much.
you,
Thank
for
you.
joining
Yeah.
us.
Thank
and
you for having us on.
yeah,
so
so
fun.
Happy New Year.
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year.
Enjoy the
2019.
holidays.
Yes, we got this.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it, folks. This is the last show of Two Mooks and a Mic of the year. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Matt McGuire, and next Friday we will be back with Jim Thomas as your co-host. He will be reporting on his ventures in Missouri. We'll see how that went.
That's where my daughter lives.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Oh,
St.
yeah.
Louis.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we'll compare notes then. And until then, be safe, be well, and we'll see you in the new year.